All right, so we're going to pick up in this video kind of where we left off, and we're going to deal once again with these five components or activities that you might encounter in your supply chain management, right? So we talked about the overall strategy, we talked about sourcing. Then the next part is the transformation process, right? And this transformation process is where the raw materials are changed into whatever kind of product it is that you're going to sell. So there's a few things involved in that. One of the most important is the scheduling of production activities, right? So that's a major part of your second paper. So you've got the paper on shipping, and then you've got the paper on production scheduling, comes in this section here, right? And so with each product that you're building, there are different steps in the production process, right? And so part of supply chain management incorporates the different stages of development, right? So if you're producing potato chips, you're going to get in as raw ingredients during your sourcing a whole bunch of potatoes. You're going to get different oils. You're going to get different spices. You're going to get different plastics, not for the chips themselves, for the bag, right? Different inks, perhaps, for the printing of the bags. You're going to have some kind of glue sourcing that you're going to do to seal the bags. You're going to have boxes that you have to bring in to ship things out in. You're going to have maybe packing materials, different things of that nature. So those are all the sources. When you get to the transformation process, you're going to have a scheduling process of the production manufacturing where on one end, potatoes are getting peeled and sliced, right, to the right size, and then those slices are coming through production. And then at the next step, they're going to be introduced to heat and oil of some kind to make them into a chip. And then at some point, then they're going to be introduced to the spices. And so you're going to have another part of the supply chain is the different spices being mixed into the proper ingredient ratio to meet the chips that have just gone through the cooking process at exactly the right time. So you've got to have the oils coming in on one end. You've got to have the spices ready in another part of the production. You've got to have the potatoes ready in another part of the production. And then you're going to have another part where the bags are weighed out and the proper amount is put in, right? And then you're going to have another part where the bags are sealed. And for every product, there are these different stages that your production goes through, right? So that's part of the transformation process. And typically in a larger companies, you may have executives or managers over just this, right? You know, the bigger you get, the more you may have not just a supply chain manager that runs this, but you've got a supply chain manager, and then you've got other managers at each section. So the larger you get, the more people you're able to bring in to the process. But in this manufacturing part, it's important for the supply chain manager to be there and to be part of this, because if the potato chip gets there and the supplies are not there at each piece that it needs, then nothing happens. So this really is a major part of supply chain management is the transformation process, right? Because all the work that's done in sourcing now feeds into the transformation process so that everything that's needed is there at the right time and the right amounts, okay? Other parts to the transformation process would include some form of testing, right? You want to make sure that what you're doing, you're producing good stuff. So, random tests are often done. Or in potato chips, you may have, as part of the line, you may have some quality control people that stand there and they're just watching. And if there's a burnt chip in the thing, they'll pull it out and throw it away, and they're watching. So testing and quality control are part of this process. Some companies randomly select a piece, and then they take that piece over to an inspector of some kind, and they inspect it to make sure that it's meeting qualifications. Also in this is preparation for delivery, right? So delivery is its own kind of unit, but in this part, there's also the preparation for delivery. So getting it into the boxes. So for, if you're manufacturing and you've got thousands of things that you're manufacturing each month and you're shipping them to a retailer, each retailer may get several boxes worth. Or maybe if you're shipping to a corporate office, they may get a whole pallet worth, and then they send it to their individual retailers or something, right? It's like if you were, selling jeans, right, at Sears, there's a central hub where you would send a whole bunch of your jeans to, and then from there they would ship it to their individual stores, right? So you may be shipping out an entire pallet, and so getting all of those jeans packed up into boxes, and then taking all of those boxes and putting it on a pallet, and then wrapping that and getting it ready for delivery is part of the transformation process, right? So you've got a delivery process, but then you've also got a preparation for shipment process where things are put in boxes, they're put on pallets, they're, however it goes for that individual product, but getting it ready to be shipped, right, is part of the transformation process. And then we talked a little bit about quality improvement, but within this, some things that a manager might think about is not just the quality improvement. Quality, as far as what we were talking about so far, is just making sure that the product itself is up to standard, right? But maybe there's some quality improvements that the company can make. And so this is an area where you might look at that and say, is there something that we can adjust in our transformation process to increase the quality of our product? Or then there's things like total quality management, which gets into looking at this part of the process and saying, are there things we're doing that are not as efficient as they could be, right? Is there a way to improve this process to increase efficiency? So that's something that the supply chain managers are going to want to look at this stage, is can we improve efficiency here, right? That's the name of the game in that part of the process. Not just efficiency of the system, but worker efficiency, right? Or is there a machine that we can purchase that will improve efficiency? So all those are considerations in the transformation process. Then the delivery process is really just the mechanism for getting the product from your possession to the possession of the customer or the retailer who's going to distribute your product, right? So there's really only about 3 places you're going to send your product. You're either going to send your product, you're going to deliver it direct to a consumer, right? Or you're going to deliver it direct to a retailer, right? So it shows up at the store that is going to sell it. So you shipped it directly to that store. It shows up to the back of the store. Somebody opens the boxes, takes it, and puts it on the shelf. Or you're going to ship it to a distribution center of some kind, right? Where you're going to send a whole pallet or something to this distribution center, and then they are going to distribute to different places, right? So depending on the type of order, that's your main 3 types of delivery that you're going to have. So if you're going to be delivering to these things, if you are going to be delivering to places nationally, right, then having a network of warehouses is often something that larger companies begin to have to do. So think about it this way: if our school is here in Central Florida, right? We're right near Disney, and so if we produce something here that we wanted to ship to California, all of a sudden the costs for that are going to be very high because it's all the way across the other side of the country. So if we were selling products on a national scale, it would probably be advantageous for us to have some kind of either warehouse or something, even if we didn't produce it on the West Coast, if we could produce a whole bunch of them here and ship one large shipment and then store it over there, and then as we get orders on the West Coast, fulfill them out of the warehouse there, right? So that each individual order is only being shipped a short distance because we got a whole bunch of them being stored on the West Coast, right? So we may still produce them at our factory here in Florida, but we will ship large shipments where that way we get volume discounts on the shipping. Like maybe we fill a whole semi and we're just paying for that one semi trip. And then when it gets there, then all of a sudden that warehouse is going to hold a whole semi of our product. And then as individual people in California purchase our product, then we have much cheaper shipping costs for them because we've got warehouses in strategic places, right? So part of your delivery mechanism has to incorporate where your warehouse is. Now, obviously, if you're a small company, your warehouse may be your garage, right? I mean, that's just how it works sometimes. But the larger you get, the more you're going to have this consideration. Would it be cheaper for us to rent space in other parts of the country as opposed to having all of this eaten up with shipping costs, right? And having much larger delays on the times that our customers get the product and things like that. So those are definitely some things to consider, right? Is where you place your warehouses, right? And then your carrier relationships, right? If you're going to use UPS, FedEx, whatever, the post office, whoever you're going to use, it's important to establish a relationship with them. And typically it's better to, you can have multiple carriers if you want, but sometimes they will give you maybe volume discounts. If you're a large customer, they have some options available to larger customers that are not available to somebody that just walks into the store and says, hey, I want to ship this. And so, if you can drive enough business their way, then they're much more willing to work with you and create a shipping plan that works well for you and your customers, right? Okay. And then the only other part that's super important in the delivery is going to be your invoicing, right? So if you're a lot of times you'll have relationships with warehouses or with distributors where there's an automatic refill, right? And so automatically when they run out of your product, they're going to order some more. And so just like you have a relationship with your supplier, right, the ones you're getting your raw materials with, where you want to have an invoicing system with them, where when you run out of potatoes for your potato chips, that they've already got some coming because you've got a system set up with them, and they know that they're going to get paid, and you're going to get your potatoes, and you've got that invoicing system, worked out in a good way. Same thing on the other end. Whoever's buying your product, right, you're going to want to have a good invoicing system with them, right? Okay. And so, that deals with receiving payments, all that kind of stuff for your invoicing, right? And then, one other thing along with delivery, or that you might even put into your planning and strategy, is the receipt of orders, right? The receipt of orders. So it's part of the overall planning strategy, right? So it may be that you want to incorporate the order system more at the beginning. Some companies do that, where it's like a just-in-time ordering, which just-in-time means that we're producing them as we need them, right? That we don't have the money to store. Cars are notorious for doing this. Car companies, they don't have the money to store cars everywhere. Cars take up a lot of space. They're heavy, and so car companies, when the order comes in, then it goes through their system, and they start building the car on an as-needed basis, right? So that the moment it comes off the assembly line, it has somebody that's already bought it, whether it's a dealer or an individual, and it's going straight to them. So they don't have to hold on to it, right? And so it's called just-in-time. Or if you're a smaller company or something like that, maybe you're focused more down here, that you're just building them as you come. You may hold on to some of them, and as somebody orders it, then you ship it out to them. But somewhere in your process, depending on your company, you have to have a mechanism for the receiving of orders, right? And that's going to be definitely in some ways connected with your delivery, so that they know where to send these. So that's something to keep in mind for your delivery part, is the collection of orders and the system whereby somebody is able to see how much has been ordered and where it's going, right? And that information gets relayed down here to the delivery people, so that they're able to put together the packages with the right amount of product in each one and get them prepared. So somewhere along this way. And it also includes a little bit with your sourcing information, because if you're able to maybe estimate your orders based on averages or something like that, then it gives you a better clue as to how much raw materials you should be purchasing for that month, right? And so, your order system affects everything, but definitely here at this point in the delivery, there's got to be somebody who's able to look at a list of each of your customers and where what their address is, how many they bought, what they bought. The larger the company gets, the more automated that becomes, right? And so, there's machines that package the stuff, and they've got labels already printed, and that kind of thing. So obviously, with any of this stuff, with manufacturing, the larger you become, the more automated you want to be, because there's, I was doing some just for fun. I wanted to see, okay, if a company was going to sell 1 million of something in a year, how many would they have to sell, right? At different time frames, right? So I'll give you an example of what I mean. Assuming 5 days a week working, right? Because as a Christian leader, I tend to lean towards not being open on Sundays or Saturdays, so that people have time to go to church and people have time to spend with their family. But not all manufacturing companies do that. In fact, many of them that are very automated, work 7 days a week, and maybe clean at night. They clean the machines every night, have them up and running. Some of them will operate 24 hours a day, and once a week they'll close down for a few hours, clean everything up, and then keep going. So different companies handle that different ways. But so for my assumptions in terms of my math that I did, it was working 10-hour days, 5 days a week. And so in order to produce 1 million of something, that would mean that's approximately 385 units per hour, right? Per hour. So to produce 1 million of something in a year, working 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, you would have to produce 385 per hour, right? Which works to 6 to 7 per minute, right? That you have to produce. So every minute you're producing about 6 and a half, of your products, right? So that means every 10 seconds something has to come off the line in order to produce 1 million in a year, right? And when you start thinking about that, you begin to realize that no one person could produce something that fast, right? So there comes a threshold when human labor can no longer handle the workload that you're going to need to support the sales that you have. So as you're growing as a supply chain manager, you're constantly looking for ways to automate systems, right? Where can we put a machine to supplement some of the things that our people are doing and help our people to be more efficient, right? Because in order to produce one every 10 seconds, you'd have to have tons of people working on that to do it that efficiently, right? As opposed to purchasing one machine. All right, so in terms of producing jobs, that doesn't help too much, but the company could never survive, because what people don't talk about is if you don't buy the machine and you tried to have all of these workers, the workers' salaries are a lot more than the machine, which means the price of the product goes up. So you can't have it both ways. I mean, if you're going to have no machines and only have thousands and thousands of workers to do something that a few machines could have done, then the salaries of those workers are going to drive costs up, and so it's and then people are going to complain about that. So, anyways, there's pros and cons to both. So you need obviously some human interaction in there. You need to have some people working there, but in ways that you can, in order to produce the most, you're going to have to automate at some point. And so that's decisions that you need to think about, is where are my first automations going to be? What are the first machines I can purchase that will help me to produce more, right? And then as you produce more, then you're able to fill more needs, right? You're able to fill more orders. And then as you fulfill more orders, then you can maybe put a little more in marketing, which is going to create more orders, right? And then all of a sudden your current system is not going to be able to handle it as much, and you're going to take that extra money and buy another piece of automation somewhere or hire someone or something, and then you kind of have this back and forth until your corporation becomes large and able to handle, through a combination of workers and automation, handle large volumes, right? But that's always something you got to be thinking about, is how are we going to automate? All right, and then your last section here, just customer service. This is much more focused on customer service on business to business things. Customer service in terms of what happens with your retailer. Say you're producing these jeans, you ship them a box of 20, they only sell 10. A lot of times they'll ship you that other that they don't sell comes back to you, right? That's generally how it works. If they order 20 of them from you, now every business is a little different, but if they order 20 of them from you, there's normally some kind of deal on how they're going to handle the ones that don't get sold. Now, some places it's different. I know I worked, when I was younger, I worked at Barnes & Noble. And so if a book sat for too long, and I thought this was just egregious as a book lover, but what they would actually do, this is a true story, I don't know if they still do this or not, because this was 15 years ago, but if a book had been on the shelf for more than an X amount of time, and they didn't think they were going to sell it, they had a deal with the publishers where they would rip the cover off and just ship back the cover in order to get their credit back for the book that didn't sell, and then the book itself would just be thrown in the trash. And then they would collect all the covers into a stack, so they were shipping just a small box back to the manufacturer, and they would get a credit back and say it didn't sell. And so some industries work that way, and some don't. I know in some clothing places, they don't send it back, and so they put it on a discount rack, right? Try and get something for it. Put it on a big sale and try and get something back for it. So different industries work different. But so there are customer service issues that you will deal with, not just with individual customers who are calling. So that's a whole another thing of customer service, right? That is part of it. But then you've also got your businesses that you deal with, where you're going to have customer service that is connected specifically to your supply chain. Maybe you've got an issue with a supplier, right? And so you've got to contact them and do some customer service with your supplier, right? And then, so that's definitely some things that you want to have. And then any restocking issues. Restocking is kind of when they send you things back, that thing with the book, that kind of stuff. Or perhaps you had maybe some inventory lapses, and so you've got some issues now where people were expecting stuff from you and you just didn't get it out in time. There's customer service involved in that. Maybe you had some product defects. There's all that kind of stuff, because they take it back to the person who sold it, right? So say if you're selling a television and someone gets it home and they come back within 30 days and take it back to the store and say, hey, this thing was broken, a lot of times the store itself will then send that to the manufacturer and say, hey, this TV that you sold us, when we sold it, they said it was broken. So we want our money back from you. You sold us a broken TV, right? And so there's issues that way. So that sometimes the store that you take it back to is not the one that takes the hit. A lot of times it's the manufacturer who takes the hit when you return something, right? Because the store just looks at that and says, hey, people, you sold me a defective product. And so you've got customer service issues that are not just dealing with your individual customers, but a lot of times when you're talking about supply chain customer service, you're talking about dealing business to business with other business leaders, okay? All right, so that's your 5 areas of supply chain management, and you could spend a whole lot of time studying any one of these areas. In fact, large companies, these are full divisions with hundreds of employees and several managers that oversee each stage of this, right? Okay, so in terms of your independent study, this gives you a guideline of the different areas that you could research and look at to kind of get a deeper understanding of supply chain management, okay?